I'm about to explain one of the biggest reasons why people struggle to lose weight and the reason why your weight can jump up on the scales significantly for no apparent reason. I've worked with thousands of people with disabilities in my career, and these days the weight control aspect is the bit I'm most confident I can help with. The reason being, I know exactly what works, but I also know what tools people need to ensure that the job gets done. However, I nearly always come across the same hurdle early on when a new client starts a new regime. Several weeks of weight loss, and then one morning when a client thinks they've done everything right, they freak out because they jump on the scales and they see that they've gained weight. This is the point when most people would say, screw it, this doesn't work, and then they jump ship and they look for the next quick fix. Typically, they'll feel upset, gutted, a bit useless, and they'll have some sort of a blowout and undo all of the progress that they'd made up until that point. This gets them stuck in a vicious cycle where they just repeat the same process. Try something new, it doesn't work. Start again with something different, it doesn't work. And they keep going without realizing what the real problem is. There's a constant hunt for a magic new system which is going to make it work this time. But what people don't realize is that if they actually stuck to one single plan for long enough, they'd see results and they wouldn't need to keep jumping ship. When a client on one of my programs sees a jump up in the scales, I reassure them and tell them it's not a problem, not to worry. However, if I see it for a couple of weeks in a row, then I'll start asking questions, investigate, and see if there's a reason why they're not seeing results. The problem's usually easily rectified and we'll have that client back on track in no time. But if there's one thing I've learned over the years is that training somebody with a disability or a chronic illness means that we often need to take a slightly different approach. Now check this out. The image here shows my weight over a 2-month period while I was actively trying to lose weight. You see those peaks every so often? These are typically Mondays when I weigh in at my heaviest because of something that I call the weekend effect. During this period, typically I would weigh in at my lightest on a Friday morning and gain maybe 2 kilos, which is around 4.5 pounds across the weekend, which would show up on my scales on the Monday morning. What follows that over the next 24 hours is a 2 kilo drop in weight, which corrects the balance. I'm going to explain why in a minute, but before that I want to reassure you that this is a fairly predictable pattern. Understanding that things don't always go to plan and that your weight on the scale may not always correlate with your behavior is a great way to ensure adherence and consistency when you're progressing to your goal. For example, at one point during this 2-month journey, I weighed in at my lightest on a Friday morning, which is typical, and I went out for a massive birthday lunch, which led into birthday drinks, and that led into evening food, lots more to drink. Lots of calories consumed, which is often the case. And at a guess, I reckon I probably consumed about 4,000 to 5,000 calories on that particular day. Now that is the sign of a successful night out. But imagine my surprise when I jumped on the weighing scales in the morning to find out that I weighed in even lighter than the day before. Bizarre. And then imagine my surprise the following day after I'd had a modest breakfast, a modest lunch, and a modest pasta for dinner, when I jumped on the scales on Sunday morning to find that I'd gained a ton of weight overnight. I was surprised, but not bothered, because I knew that it would correct itself further down the line. Now, what's the explanation for this phenomenon? Water is the simple answer to that. Our muscles are like sponges, and they can absorb or exude a serious amount of water in a short space of time. It's all down to the amount of glycogen which is stored in your muscles. We get a share of our energy from glucose. Our body converts glucose, which is a carbohydrate, into glycogen, which then gets stored in various places within your body, one of which is your muscles. For every gram of glycogen stored within your muscles, you'll also absorb roughly 3 to 4 milliliters of water too, which equals 3 to 4 extra grams of weight. So if you restrict your carbohydrate intake, or you burn lots of energy, therefore removing some of that glycogen from your muscles, you'll get rid of a lot of the water that's been stored within those muscles at the same time. The result of this is a rapid loss in weight, because 1 litre of water weighs exactly 1 kilogram of mass. Equally, the next time you consume a carbohydrate-based meal, your body's going to store all of that glycogen that it's lost, along with 3 to 4 times that amount of water weight as well. This means that the reading on the scales can jump back up in a significantly short space of time. Now, this makes your muscles bigger in terms of volume, but it doesn't actually affect your body fat. If we go back to my image above, it might appear that I've dropped 6 kilograms, or roughly 13 pounds, from 88.5 kilograms to 82.5 over the 2-month period, but that's not the reality. That's what we would call a peak to trough measurement, which compares my starting weight with my muscles full of glycogen and water to my latest or most recent weigh-in when the muscles are depleted of glycogen and water. A better, more realistic way would be to compare the peaks to the peaks or the troughs to the troughs. We can even draw a line of best fit on the graph. Either way, it's going to better reflect the amount of body fat we've lost rather than just the water weight that we're losing or gaining. Doing this would show that in reality, I've lost about 4 kilograms, roughly 8.8 pounds of fat. And here's what this might look like. The start of the red line to the end of the red line. So I care less about my latest weigh-in and more about the general trend, because that better represents my actual body fat, whether or not I'm losing it or gaining it, and this is something that you should understand too. Other factors which might affect your latest weigh-in are how much water you've drunk, how dehydrated you are due to exercise, the time of day. You're usually at your lightest upon waking after you've been for a whiz in the morning, and you're usually at your heaviest before you go to bed. And finally, your menstrual cycle will have a big effect on your weight. Women are usually at their heaviest in the luteal phase leading up to menstruation. Remembering all of this will mean that you can use the scales more effectively and have a better understanding of the results that you see. Of course, there are many other factors which can affect one's ability to lose weight. Specifically, when we're talking about disabilities, we need to consider that most people with a disability or a chronic illness move far less than the average person, and should amend their calorie intake according to this. There's a lot to learn when it comes to health and fitness, but hopefully this video's given you some clarity and will help you going forward. So next time you see a bad result on the scale, don't let it get to you. Focus on the trend, not your most recent weigh-in result.